In this DCS update, we take a deep dive into what it means to have a MiG-29A full fidelity 4th generation aircraft following Wags's overview of this long-awaited addition to the DCS stable. Then I spent some time looking at the Afghanistan mountains following ED's amazing update to this already spectacular map. Want to join thousands of others who are enjoying the PC VR journey and flight simulation? Look no further than the Pimax Crystal Lite. It's an entry-level VR system with some of the best visuals in the business, and right now the Pimax team is offering a limited time trade-in deal on your current headset. They also have limited time free shipping to the US, EU, UK, Australia and Canada. It's never been easier to dive into this amazing experience. Check out the link in the description below for more information so that you can start your own immersive experience in VR with Pimax. Welcome back to the DCS SITREP. I'm your host Prickly Hedgehog once again, and we'll take a deep dive into what Wags showcased with the latest MiG-29A introduction video from the ED team and what it means and what we can expect from this aircraft in the DCS ecosystem. Now really there weren't too many surprises because we already have the basic version, if you like, of a couple of different models already in the Flaming Kliss 2024 version of these aircraft. And as Wags reiterated, we do not have what we would expect to see in the equivalents, such as the F-16 or the F-18. There's an absence of multifunction displays. It is an analog jet. We don't have the fly-by-wire systems that those aircraft have, and thus it's going to be much more of a hands-on experience. And you'll notice as we go around the cockpit, a lot more buttons to click, less controls on the HOTAS system, I notice. So whereas the F-16 and the F-18 have a lot of functionality ported onto those pieces of equipment so that the pilot does not have to have hands off the controls effectively to make adjustments to sensor systems or make a enemy aircraft at least lock. Some of these buttons are absent on the controls of the MiG-29A. So there's a lot of functionality that is definitely more old school. It works, obviously, it's reliable, but less convenient, I think, in some ways in the ergonomics of the design than what we would expect to see in the Western equivalents. What we did see, though, was quite a lot of attention to detail, as is expected, of modules in DCS world these days. One of the things that did strike me was the little beveling here on some of the steam gauges, so that the indentations and the painted numbers on, say, the drift display here were quite nicely done with some minor paint chips. I think that's on the chaff jettison system there, emergency jettison system of the chaff. So again, a really nice attention to detail on this cockpit. It'll look lovely in VR as well. It's kind of a fun experience seeing all of this life, if you like, in the cockpit area. Similar to here in the, I believe it's the speed. Yeah, the speed dial here. Again, you can see the bevels and the numbers and the little notches around the side there. So again, a lot of attention to detail, but to be expected in this iteration of DCS world as it stands right now. Now, we already talked about this and Wags mentioned there is no multifunction display suite that we expect in the accoutrements of the F-16 and the F-18. It's going to be a visceral experience. It's going to be very much a hands-on experience. See on the right there, look again, some detail with the welding, if you like, of the frame there for the canopy. Very robust, heavy piece of equipment. And then the look-down HUD, if you like, the HUD repeater that's in the right-hand side of the cockpit next to the suite of emergency warning lights. Definitely a non-digital cockpit. Now, one thing that really interested me was the FOD protection system, wherein the aircraft is very much designed to take off, like a lot of Russian aircraft, designed to take off from unprepared or damaged surfaces, if you like, surfaces that are not ideal normally for taking off aircraft, where the engines can very much be destroyed or damaged by stones, rocks, and other bits and pieces that might fly up into those intakes. So the MiG-29 is able to suck air into the vents on top of the fuselage there, allowing, as I said, for that aircraft to take off. And one of the things that interested me too, they showcased those vents moving when the aircraft was under high G load. I thought was, again, a nice little showcase of some of the work that ED is doing. And also you can see there the leading edge flap slat there, which moves in order to get air over the wings at low speed. So quite a lot of the flight modeling appears to be well in hand. Wags did mention that there was a shudder when the aircraft was taking off. This was to do with the nose dampening system, which has a known bug, and hopefully they'll have that worked out by the time we get our hands on the aircraft. And one thing that I thought was very interesting again was the showcase of the helmet-mounted sight. This is designed for off-bore sight with the aphid-type missiles, infrared missiles at close range. This was a feature that was designed to be part of this aircraft. They had picked it up from, actually, I think it was the South African Air Force. The French were playing around with this system way back in the 70s. It was actually not new. It wasn't unique to this particular aircraft. Western Air Forces had been playing around with this. This kind of granny glass system was actually being used in the F-14 as well. They had trouble with the tracking systems, of course, and syncing it properly with the missile. So the technology has actually been around for a long time. It was the Hughes company that first started playing around with this, and I have a video planned on this particular technology because I think it's an interesting one based on comments I made on a prior video about this. Certainly when they started flying against the MiG-29 following the collapse of the Berlin Wall, the East and West kind of got together. The West Germans had MiG-29s still flying, and it was quickly realized this was a very much useful piece of technology, and alarmed some of the opponents, if you like, as to, hey, we need to get something similar. So it had been worked on, and various companies were getting these systems up and running. They went in a slightly different direction in terms of the technology. Still, it was a very interesting working example when they first encountered it, at least Western pilots going up against the MiG-29. And it wasn't long later before more complex systems like the joint helmet-mounted queuing system and similar systems were starting to be developed. There was actually quite a lot of... Anyway, it was interesting to see, again, this being showcased in game. And we'll see in future videos, presumably from WAGS, how this works with this particular aircraft. So in line with that, we do have an ERS system, which is on the right-hand side of the aircraft as you're looking out here. This is designed for infrared tracking of targets. It's used in other aircraft outside of the MiG-29 as well. So an interesting bit of kit. In theory, it could allow you to track something without having to use a radar, thus reducing your potential for being given away, if you like, beaming out signals. So again, another little interesting piece of kit. As is expected, we are going to have a range of medium to short-range missiles. The aircraft does have a limited air-to-ground capability, nowhere near what we would see in the F-18 and certainly the F-16, which are very capable multi-role fighters. The MiG-29 is a little bit more limited in that. Nonetheless, air-to-ground capacity is available. Let's get an overview of the cockpit here in this screenshot. Very much a steam gauge machine, very much hands-on. Some of the systems will be very familiar. You can see actually just above the HUD controls there, left and right, Wags mentioned those are the infrared tracking systems. The infrared systems actually were problematic mechanisms for measuring where the helmet is in space and time, if you like. Similar to sometimes, you have problems with your home head tracking, track IR sometimes if light gets in there, etc., etc. So a lot of the Western systems went away from the infrared systems because of those very things. I think that was one of the ones that torpedoed the work on the F-14 actually, was that they couldn't get it to reliably track. Had some issues with that, so they went just in different directions, and the system never came back, unfortunately, to that particular aircraft and others that it was being used on. Yeah, again, so no surprises here. Sort of a shot of the throttle quadrant, if you like, there, and uses a different system. As you can see, it's sort of mounted on the wall there, so slightly different from the F-18 and the F-14 that we may be more familiar with. There is some functionality in the HOTAS, but not quite as festooned, if you like, with buttons that we expect to see on our Western equivalent jets. A lot of equipment, if you like, or switches and controls are attached to the panels in front there. It was interesting to see, actually, they do have button controls for the altitude hold there. Wag sort of went through those, the attitude hold. So those are very familiar to most of us. There was an approach system as well, so we'll get more information on how those function in future lessons, presumably, or at least some sort of overview, but definitely a different design philosophy. And again, just a little bit of a close-up there of those particular features for the autopilot system. It just sort of intrigued me. It's interesting how they did a little cutout there too, sort of not very efficient design there. They had to create cutout buttons to get the screws in there for some reason, so you don't see those. I mean, it gives a good shape, I suppose, but it's just an interesting design point. And then here, I guess the HUD area, and again, those infrared tracking systems left and right of the HUD brightness controls there to control or at least measure the helmet-mounted sight system. And then Wags went through here and just poured over some of the panels, the different features. These range from radio controls to the lighting system, generator stuff, and we didn't cover the panel underneath the what looks like maybe a plastic cover there, so I don't know what those are. Maybe that'll come back as a discussion point in later videos. But again, just an interesting cockpit. Like I said, not too many surprises, and very much a clicky cockpit for those of you who enjoy switches and dials. This will be right up your alley. So Eagle Dynamics reminded us that it is a pretty deadly BVR aircraft, and also excels at the close-range dogfighting regimes as well, especially with skilled pilots. Keep an eye out for further chapters, and we will learn about how to basically start up the aircraft from cold and then taxi it to the runway and then take off. We'll see what other training systems are implemented post the aircraft's release or during the aircraft's release. I think it's a good-looking jet, and it's a nice addition. So the newsletter said that they are basically continuing on completing the aircraft systems. These include things like the damage model, the data transfer cartridge, skins, content, and bug fixing and tuning. They're also working on a large set of default controller input assignments to support several popular sticks and throttles. So that's good news. Anytime I don't have to waste poring over button assignments is always good. It's one of the challenges of DCS World is every time you get a new aircraft and you have a stick system with a lot of buttons and controls, it takes a while to get things set up. Now, we've been taking note of the many MiG-29A skin requests that the community has made, said Edie here. And at launch, they're going to provide the Soviet Union and Russia, East Germany, Poland, Kazakhstan, North Korea, and Syria. And apparently the cat has approved that choice. Many more are in the works, they say, and will be coming soon. Additional external modeling tasks are being worked on. This includes highly detailed missile and bomb pylons and external fuel tanks. And they are also developing a version of the NS-430 navigation system for DCS World. This will be a separate download. Not sure if that will be a pay-for, because there is a pay-for version of that. And that's for aircraft that don't really have modern navigation systems or systems that are, less reliable. And they're also going to do English and Cyrillic cockpit layout, so you will be able to, you won't have to learn Russian to read the dials in the aircraft. And there's going to be some HUD options as well with regards to that, just as some of the other aircraft in the game, like, for example, the Black Shark 3. You can have the original Russian, or you can have your controls and things read out in English, which is very helpful. So yeah, looks like they've done a great job here, so odličная robota. And we shall see what Wags comes up with for the next iteration of videos. So stay tuned for more on that. I'm very, very excited about this aircraft. Looks great. Done a great job of what we can see so far, but obviously there's still more work to do before it's going to be available for release. When that release is, I think we could be in for a late Q4, I think. Let's have a look. We're August right now. We've got about 3 or 4 months left before the end of the year here. So yeah, time is ticking, and it still sounds like there's a reasonable list of things to do. So we'll see whether or not they can meet their deadline of a 2025 release. Stay tuned for more information on that. Now, I got to grips a little bit more, been exploring in between my other gigs here, the Afghanistan map. And I have to say, certainly at certain altitudes and things like that, it is absolutely gorgeous. The changes that they've done to the color palette have been really welcome. It just looks richer, more realistic, and I'm curious to see how the map expands out and what work they do with it, because what I've seen thus far from the last big patch was very, very pleasing. Photorealistic, really. When you get the right aircraft and the right lighting, the right angles, it just looks absolutely amazing. So well done to Edie on that. Now, I went around some of the other stables here in terms of third party. Everyone's a little bit quiet right now. I know that Heatblur are working on some stuff that they weren't ready to release earlier in prior patches. So stay tuned for more from that team. Magnitude 3 has been very busy with the Corsair, which is gorgeous, and I've had a little bit of fun. Hey! Shh! And the cat loves yelling in the empty room right now. Apparently she enjoys the echoing sound of her voice. But yeah, stay tuned for more information on the Heatblur stable, because they are working on, remember, the Eurofighter. They were working on the A6 AI, and also they will be working at a later stage on the full fidelity version of that aircraft, a flyable aircraft, which is going to be fantastic. Definitely one aircraft I'm really looking forward to. So that's probably a year or two out here. We'll wait and see what they come up with in terms of information. But their next big project is going to be the Eurofighter. Expect more work there, and also porting back updates that they have learned from producing the Phantom. Those things are going to be ported back to a greater or lesser degree into the F-14 particularly. They said it was harder to port it back into the Viggen, but nonetheless, both aircraft have received updates based on the lessons that they've learned. So stay tuned for more on that, because that was another thing. We're going to see some updates to the F-14 cockpit as well. So broadly speaking, it was relatively quiet in terms of the news, and I think we'll leave it there. I'll leave you with some images from Afghanistan again. We'll see you next time.